What did you say? Who you calling a douchebag? Mind your tongue, lady.
Ethan, stop it.
Mrs. Hong, I'll arrange the best possible beauty solution for you. I really hope you like it.
Niliyafanya kwa sababu yangu mimi. Mbona unapenda kunilaumu lakini?
Na sasa umeharibu kinga ambayo niliyoiweka.
Si ni kweli nakudai ama umesahau?
You're now stalking my comment, right?
As long as someone makes my son happy, I will do anything.
Angekuwa yuko haya ingekuwa ameshajitokeza.
Ama kweli wewe una maadui wengi sana.
Divididos por una sombra de traición.
And if you continue the way that you are doing things, Mariela may just end up despising you.
No. I won't let you do that here. This house is mine. And that you're about to make a terrible mistake if you marry that woman. You are both going to regret it.
You see, I simply cannot make Mariela Salvatierra disappear without Sir Damian's consent. Lying heart.
Fue sembrando el veneno y la ambición.
A lot has been lined up before the House this afternoon session, and Senate will commence their afternoon sitting by resuming debates on this morning's bill. And among the bill that was interrupted in the morning is the County Resource Development Bill, Senate Bill number 45 of 2021 by Senator Rose Nyamunga. Another bill set for consideration before the House is the Preservation of Human Dignity and Protection of Economic Social Rights Bill, being a bill by Senator Abshiro Halake. And after the completion of the allocated time for debate, the Senate will proceed to vote on the amendments. The Irrigation Amendment Bill, a bill originating from the National Assembly, is also another bill that the House will be debating and voting on this afternoon session. The Committee of the Whole will be considering the Heritage and Museums Bill. Equally, the Committee of the Whole will be considering the County Oversight and Accountability Bill, being Senate Bills number 17 of 2021, a bill by Senator Ledama Olekina. Consequently, the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority Amendment Bill, a bill by nominated Senator Naomi Shionga, Bill number 53 of 2021, is also another bill among the 24 bills that have been lined up in this afternoon sitting. Reports of the Auditor General on the financial statement for different county governments for the year ended 30th June 2020 will also be laid on the table of the House. The reports total to 31 reports of part of 47 counties, this being county executives, and how they used their financial and budgetary allocation for the financial year ended June 2020. The Senator for Higa County will pass on to Standing Orders number 47, subsection 1. Senator George Haniri will be making a statement regarding the diminishing interest of Kenyan youth in agricultural activities. The Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Ken Lusaka, has just made his way into the chamber. I'm now handing over for the live broadcast. My name is Gladys Mungai. Enjoy your viewing. Good afternoon.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
A leader of majority.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, the 16th February 2022. 1, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Murang'a for the year ended 30th June 2020. 2, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of County Assembly of Murang'a for the year ended 30th June 2020. 3, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Samburu for the year ended 30th June 2020. 4, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of County Assembly of Samburu for the year ended 30th June 2020. 5, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Nyandarua for the year ended 30th June 2020. 6, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Nyandarua for the year ended 30th June 2020. 7, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Baringo County for the year ended 30th June 2020. 9, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of County Executive of Migori for the year ended 30th June 2020. 10, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Migori for the year ended 30th June 2020. 11, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Kakamega for the year ended 30th June 2020. 12, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Kakamega for the year ended 30th June 2020. 13, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Nakuru for the year ended 30th June 2020. 14, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Nakuru for the year ended 30th June 2020. 15, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Trans Nzoia for the year ended 30th June 2020. 16, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Trans Nzoia for the year ended 30th June 2020. 17, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Homa Bay for the year ended 30th June 2020. 18, the report of Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Homa Bay for the year ended 30th June 2020. 19, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Tharaka Nithi for the year ended 30th June 2020. 20, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Tharaka Nithi for the year ended 30th June 2020. 21, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Kisumu for the year ended 30th June 2020. 22, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of County Assembly of Kisumu for the year ended 30th June 2020. 23, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Kajiado for the year ended 30th June 2020. 23, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of 24, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Kajiado for the year ended 30th June 2020. 25, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Uasin Gishu for the year ended 30th June 2020. 26, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Uasin Gishu for the year ended 30th June 2020. 27, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Turkana for the year ended 30th June 2020. 28, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Turkana for the year ended 30th June 2020. 29, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Executive of Tana River for the year ended 30th June 2020. 30, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Tana River for the year ended 30th June 2020. And 31, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the County Assembly of Kericho for the year ended 30th June 2020. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next order. Oh, what's your point of order, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, since we resumed business, the Majority Leader has laid a lot of papers before the House, a majority of them being reports of the Auditor General on the accounts of various county executives, county assemblies, and various funds. Mr. Speaker, for those of us who still go out to seek votes to come back to this House, the biggest question has been the action taken by the House on the reports of the Auditor General. There's a lot of concern, Mr. Speaker, that some of these reports touch on governors whose terms are coming to an end, and therefore there's concern that they will not be brought to account. Mr. Speaker, could the Leader of Majority brief the House on when the leadership intends to reconstitute the sessional committees, that is the Public Accounts and Investment Committee and the Delegated Legislation Committee? Because, Mr. Speaker, all the tens or hundreds of reports that have been laid on the table will not be acted upon if that committee is not reconstituted. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I think the leadership should also do some hygiene around membership of committees because, for example, Senator Mwaura his position as a senator was affirmed by the courts. And Mr. Speaker, when he came back to the Senate to take his rightful place, he went back to the committees that he sat in previously. And it is very difficult for the chairs of those committees to be the ones to be telling him that he has been substituted. I think it is the leadership that should give him guidance. The whip on the majority side should give guidance to Senator Mwaura. If he has been replaced in committees, it looks like that information has not gotten to him. He is attending committee meetings faithfully and religiously. And Mr. Speaker, because any senator has a right to attend any committee meeting, I think it's still okay. The problem only comes in when it comes to voting. And the problem comes in when it comes to benefits or entitlements of being a committee member. I want to urge the Leader of Majority to assure the House that that hygiene will be done and also that the sessional committees will be reconstituted in good time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader, you want to respond? I can see Senator Khaneri on the same, huh? Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, it's on the same. I just want to buttress the point raised by my brother, Senator Kajwang. That's a very important point, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, There's a lot of concern out there in our counties on our oversight role on county governments. As much as we try to explain to the public that the primary oversight is done by the county assemblies and we only do secondary oversight, people want to see action. Mr. Speaker, I just want to reinforce the point that the committee should be put in place. The life of this parliament is coming to an end very soon. And not only that, Mr. Speaker, once we act on these reports by the Auditor General, there's lack of implementation. As he correctly observed, some of the reports are on governors who are outgoing. They have finished their 2 terms. And not only that, there are those who are in the last regime who did not make it for their 2nd term, and yet there were very, very strong implicating reports on those governors. Mr. Speaker, there seems to be no action taken about misappropriation of funds in the counties, even after the committee looks at the reports and makes recommendation to EACC. We have not seen any action. Mr. Speaker, it brings me back to my point that we must bring back the implementation committee in the Senate to follow up and ensure that the reports that we make to EACC and other government agencies are acted upon. People want to see action taken against governors who have misappropriated public funds. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to reinforce the point by Senator Kajwang. It's a very, very important point. Thank you.
A leader of majority, you want to respond to? Okay, Senator Sakaja, the same. Okay.
Just a quick response, Mr. Speaker. I think ever since we came to this house, with those who are not in this house before, from 2017, every time there's such an issue, members ask for implementation committee. We are now in 2022. Mr. Speaker, would I be in order to ask that the leadership tells us and the Rules and Procedure Committee where they are in terms of reinstating that committee? Because many committees pass very serious resolutions, not just CPIC, all our committees. But because of the nature of work, if you look at the number of petitions before our committees, the number of statements, it is very easy for things to slip through our fingers. Maybe the leader of majority, as he responds, can tell us if there's been any progress. Should we expect that, or should we expect that in the next Senate? Because in the absence of that, then this house is being seen as the most, I think, highly resourced talk shop in this country. We speak about, governors, we talk about the ills in the national government, and then nothing is done. And we lose our saltiness. The Bible says if you lose your saltiness, you're worth nothing but to be stumbled upon by men and thrown away. But we lose our saltiness if all you do is just lament and talk. So the leader of majority, because he is holding responsibility, needs to tell us where we are in terms of amending our standing orders to reintroduce the implementation committee of the Senate. And the chair of, maybe the most recent chair of CPIC should also tell us where we are on implementing those resolutions that we've had from our county governments. Because when those of us who want to become governors, you included, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to come and respond to Governor Kananu's audit queries or Governor Sonko. I want to deal with the Nairobi administration, the one I take over, Mr. Speaker. So we need those answers before, as soon as possible, Chair.
A leader of majority.
Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank the members who are raising these issues, very pertinent issues, challenging all of us in our respective positions as committees. Some of these things fall directly under the Committee of Rules and responsible for making sure that our standing orders are updated. Some of these actually including the issues of prioritizing which committees can become sessional or committees can become standing, including the issue now raised about the Committee on Implementation. Is also coming to the desk of the House Business Committee or Senate Business Committee, where Sakaja sits. So you can also begin from that process. We've asked for this. We've also asked if some of the committees called sessional committees, especially a committee like delegated legislation, can actually become a standing committee so that we don't have to have this issue of replacing that every so often. On the issue raised, Mr. Speaker, about Senator, the nominated Senator Mwaura, you know, Mr. Speaker, that we've tried here to bring a list for the various committees to affirm the various committees, and you know that this House did not allow that to go through. And so the changes have not happened. But as soon as that is possible to do, he should be able to be in his rightful committees. The Speaker, what I'm saying basically is these questions can be dealt with either for now or for posterity, but the idea is how do we move within such a short time now and the remaining time to change our standing orders, to amend our standing orders so that to allow for another committee, like the Committee on Implementation. And so those are things that we need to consider as well. But for posterity, maybe for the next Parliament, we can actually think about it. The Speaker, we also have pressed for time in terms of when we're going on to adjourn Sine Die. And it's coming in June, so we don't have much time, Speaker, to be thinking about some of these things now. We already have problems. Even those committees sitting, quorum for committees, is also already a problem. It's already a problem having quorum here, and so on. So, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we take note as House Business Committee or Senate Business Committee, take note as the relevant committees, and we work to improve the next time. Thank you.
Senator Mtula Jr. Via Zoom also wanted to contribute to this. Yes, Mtula Jr. I think, yeah, we are unable to get Senator Mtula Jr. I just wanted to reinforce what Senator Leader of Majority has said. I think we did make a recommendation on the restoration of the implementation committee, and because of the time, I think the recommendation is positive, but it will be implemented, I think, by the next Senate because of the time frame. But the recommendations were positive. Next, Senator Mwaruma. Okay, I can see you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the Leader of Majority has responded to the concerns, except the one of reconstituting the sessional committees.
In House Business Committee, which met yesterday, we gave them 1 week to do that. I'm sure they should be able to do that because we are really running out of time. So by next week, we should be able to get it. Next.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator George Khaniri.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and I rise pursuant to the provisions of our standing orders, and in particular 47 paragraph 1, to make a statement on a matter of county-wide concern, namely the diminishing interest of our youth in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, research from the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, FAO, shows that the agricultural sector solely employs 40% of Kenyans, including 70% of Kenya's rural population. This then contributes to over a quarter of Kenya's GDP, and another quarter comes from its linkages with other sectors, accounting for 65% of the total export earnings. Mr. Speaker, agricultural processes do not only benefit farmers. From each emerging burgeoning fashion designer working with cotton or leather to persons in the tourism and hospitality industry, all have direct outputs linked to the success or failure of agriculture as a sector, and all build careers on the success of Kenya's farmers. For a sector so central to Kenya economy, not only does agriculture benefit us as business-wise, but also in our daily lives, since we are humans and we need to eat. Mr. Speaker, studies show that young people have a negative attitude towards agriculture and the work it entails. Most of our youth believe that a career in the agricultural sector is not profitable to small-scale and individual farmers, but instead only profits large industries and organizations. Besides this, the sector does not have relatable role models to steer the younger generation towards wanting to venture into it. Due to this belief, we find that very few, if any, young people are venturing into agriculture as a career or even just as a hobby. This is a very worrying trend, Mr. Speaker, and leaves Kenya's agricultural future in a lot of uncertainty. We need to find ways in which these knowledge gaps can be bridged, because there is no pride whatsoever in our agriculture sector, despite it having great potential of Kenyans and its citizens, Mr. Speaker. It has become evident that as much as many people would like to venture into agriculture, they become more and more discouraged due to fear of making losses. Investing in agriculture in this country does not seem appealing because the government has not made vigorous efforts to ensure that farmers are given incentives and have favorable returns on their investment. Our youth have seen how farmers continue to be mistreated in this country and have not benefited from their farming activities. Mr. Speaker, the price of input to engage in farming is quite high, yet when it gets to the reaping, the benefits of hard work, the yield is low. Look at what happened last year, Mr. Speaker, to the maize farmers. They invested heavily in buying seeds, only to later find that they were supplied with suspect seeds that failed to germinate, leading to crop failure and therefore huge losses. Let us not forget the hundreds of times farmers have had to strike due to unfair treatment and unfair losses. Our farmers do not seem to be respected, and their rights are always being infringed. If it is not high taxes or fertilizers today, it's unfair treatment tomorrow or unkept promises. Just the other day, tea farmers had to uproot their crops due to low returns. Imagine how bad it was for them to choose to lose everything. If all we ever hear is farmers complaining about poor treatment, low returns and losses, would our youth, or anyone for that matter, be motivated to venture into agriculture? Mr. Speaker, we as a nation have been blessed with fertile soils and numerous natural resources that give us a head start to successful agriculture. Why are we not maximizing on these resources? To see the youth fearing to use these resources freely is quite heartbreaking. The unfortunate thing is that when the dry season starts, you will hear everyone complaining about the lack of food. Prices of maize and other food products will possibly increase, yet farmers will still not receive good yield. We need to find out what we are doing wrong as a country and create better terms and opportunities for our farmers and especially for our youth who would love to venture into farming. Mr. Speaker, the government has not treated farmers fairly over the years, and this needs to come to an end. Let us, as a government, create urgency in ensuring that farmers are not always crying and complaining. We can develop mandates to implement action plans that ensure far better benefits from our nation's soil to individual farmers, micro, small, and medium-sized players. Further, the way agriculture is taught can be revamped to make it more attractive to our youth, and teachers offered new training and resources to ensure intake and retention of interested, innovative young minds in formal and informal learning. The benefits of agriculture to other sectors should also be discussed more intentionally for greater public interest. Social media could be a great tool used in having these conversations and should be taken seriously as an important educational platform, as this is the quickest way to gain the attention of the youth. Mr. Speaker, all these and other interventions should be youth pioneered and led in the public and private sectors to start and continue the actions needed to revive youth interest in agriculture for the good of all Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the future of agriculture is highly dependent on our youth interest in the sector. It will be wise for us to make more effort in encouraging interest in this sector. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Senator, I thought I saw Sakajas. You withdrew. You withdrew, okay?
Mr. Speaker, that is exactly why I want to speak. I heard Senator Kaniri saying, "Mtu wa Nairobi hajui kilimo." Mr. Speaker, just two things. First of all, I want to thank Senator Kaniri. He always brings very topical statements and he is taking advantage of the provisions of our standing orders. I think many more of us need to be able to give such statements. Mr. Speaker, there is something called urban and peri-urban agriculture. Urban and peri-urban agriculture, Mr. Speaker, historically has been used in many cities and urban settings to ease the cost of food production and to really alleviate a lot of our families and residents of urban areas from abject poverty. And I always talk about urban poverty. In Nairobi, when you don't have money, you will not eat and you will not have a place to stay. But there is indeed urban agriculture, whether it is in the guinea bags or what we call gunias, whether it is community gardens, like what was popularly done in Seattle, what has happened in the in various different jurisdictions, which for subsistence needs has really been able to help people have that extra income. A lot of the people in Nairobi and in other urban areas like Nakuru don't have even extra. They're not what we call the Kadonye economy. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, they get everything in small rations, whether it is maize flour, they get it measured in small sizes. Even toothpaste, you go with a toothbrush and you're given just a little bit of it. But peri-urban and urban agriculture, and which is why, Mr. Speaker, if you remember very well, when we had this debate on the formula, I really insisted that Nairobi could not be scored 0 on agriculture, because apart from Dagoretti South, where you have Waithaka, Udhiru, and a lot of those areas, in Kasarani constituency, in Njiru and Ruai, a lot of Nairobi also is under agriculture, including areas in Karen, etc. In fact, some of the livestock that have won in the annual agricultural shows have been from Nairobi, and I'm sure you know that as former PS of livestock. Mr. Speaker, the main point is the reason why young people are not, are losing interest in agriculture is because we've not looked at the value chain of it. Agriculture contributes 56% of our GDP, but only 3% of revenue. That gap that you see over there is because of lack of value addition. These young people want to make a quick buck. Until we're able to show them how value addition, how we can do it. I'm very glad to say today I've seen Governor of Makueni, Kivutha Kibwana, launching some processing plant for pulses in Makueni County. And I think it's done very well. Pulses and grains, processing. It's cost 210 million shillings. You see, that then changes the value of what the farmer would just have given as raw materials to a finished product. A lot of this value addition, Mr. Speaker, is supposed to happen in the urban areas, including Nairobi. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, just as I buttress the point of Nairobi, is all of these things that are coming from across the country. Where is the market? We have 15,000 extension visits annually in the county of Nairobi. Yet in the formula that was being proposed that time, there was not a shilling being put for the extension office visits by Nairobi County. Mr. Speaker, there's a whole, and I will tell you, Senator Kaniri, a whole write-up on what urban and peri-urban agriculture has been able to do, including in the US during the time of the Great Depression. You know, the president then, if I remember well, insisted on the cities doing that, and it really cushioned the people from excess depression. I have areas in Mathare, for instance, just by the water, where young people are doing pig farming, very proper pig farming. They are doing chicken farming, and it has alleviated them from poverty. And they have seen the result of doing chicken, doing pigs in the urban area. So we're also affected. We're not just consumers, but we also can be producers. And we intend to put it a notch higher after August 2022, Mr. Speaker, when the necessary happens, inshallah, just to make sure that even us in the urban area can be able to see that instead of spending that extra 200 shillings on flour and on vegetables, even within the slums, we can be able to provide for that so that we have food sufficient. But I thank Senator Kaniri for that. I think we need to start being more creative. One of the companies, Mr. Speaker, that as I conclude, that is going to be one of our first unicorns in terms of the startup sector in this country, in fact in East Africa, is Twiga Foods. And what they've done, they've been able to bridge the gap between production to the market. They're having now a turnover of 100 million shillings a day. And that is a startup. That is why we really insisted. And I thank senators for passing the startup bill that has now gone to the National Assembly. That unicorn is now a global case study. Or rather, I mean, that company that is going to be a unicorn. And it's Twiga Foods, it's Kenyan-owned, Kenyan-driven, doing a turnover of 100 million shillings daily. They're even moving now to other, products, whether it is oil, even electronics. But the basic structure of it, Mr. Speaker, was about agriculture and creating a value chain, making sure there's value addition within our ecosystem. So I want to thank Senator Kaniri for that, and I think it's something we all must look at keenly. Thank you.
Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like also, for giving me the opportunity, I would like to support the statement by Senator Haniri on the diminishing interest on agriculture by the youth. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the contribution that has already been made by Senator Sakaja. But the most important thing we know in this country is that Kenya is an agricultural country. That one we all know. We were taught that when we were in primary school. We know very well that Kenya is a consuming country. We import almost, I don't know what percentage, but a very big percentage of our food, even the basic ones like vegetables, fruits, and all that. Mr. Speaker, we also know that we are favored with land, we are favored with, but the most unfortunate thing, first of all, the input is very expensive. That is already said, very, very expensive. Any farmer who undertakes. So it is not attractive to our young people because they know whatever little money they have, once it is put in agriculture, that's the end of it. First of all, it is very expensive. Secondly, rain-fed agriculture can never be competitive anywhere in the world. In fact, if we are going to continue with rain-fed agriculture, I don't think there's anybody who is going to be interested. When I was young, it was very clear that on the 15th of Feb, it was a planting period. You start planting for because within a week, the rains was on. But right now, you can plow, you can plant like 3-4 times before the rains. We can no longer predict our weather or our rains in time. So long as we are still rely on the rain-fed agriculture, really we are not serious. Thirdly, we know very well that one of the agenda for the government, this government, is food security. We are not going to achieve food security so long as we are not working towards improving. And then the market chain, that is already mentioned by Senator Sakaja, it is critical. And then the middlemen who come in between the farmer and the market. So those are the issues that should be addressed, and it is very important that this bill, this statement moves beyond this. And I think this is not the first time we are talking about these things. Something should be done about agriculture if we need to have food security, and if we need to be serious that we want to engage our young people, not only the young people, but everybody on agriculture. I support the statement, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Musurve.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. And I begin by thanking Senator Haniri for coming up with this statement. And it is a statement of great concern because the youths are energetic, the youths are innovative, and in this time, if youths are engaged in anything and they put all the energy there, then whatever it is will become very successful. And it is true, yes, that when it comes to agriculture, the youths are not really engaged and they are not so interested. But the lack of interest could be attributed to lack of motivation and incentives in getting into agriculture. Probably county governments need to ensure that they're bringing youths on board with regard to raising awareness about the importance of agriculture in the counties, and also apart from awareness, giving youth an opportunity to get into tenders, county tenders and national tenders, so that they can be motivated to get into agriculture. Because when it comes to agriculture, it is closely related to food security. And if our youth participate in enhancing food security, then our country will be free from hunger, Honorable Speaker. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, even colleges and universities should embrace agriculture very strongly, so that they give courses that that will make youths go back to the society and get into agriculture. But again, at the end of the day, even when people are getting into courses, they ask themselves, what is the value? So there's need to also offer employment for the youths who have also finished courses and colleges in agriculture, to entice others to get into to agriculture, Honorable Speaker, because agriculture is important, and it is one of the very important SDGs to ensure that there's food and there's no hunger for any citizen. So, Honorable Speaker, there are so many incentives that the youth can be given. Even, having tax exempts for youths who are getting into agriculture, that can be one of the motivating ways of ensuring that we are using our youth productively. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Senator Haniri, for coming up with this very important statement.
Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Haniri. In the life of this Parliament, and ever since I joined this Senate, he has always utilized this standing order in a manner that will help him in future to write his memoirs, because he has always talked about very topical issues. And what I've seen other great leaders do is that they take their contributions in Parliament and in public service and compile it into a book. And I encourage you, Senator Haniri, to do so. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest scams of my generation, the generation that Senator Haniri is crying about, that has got no interest in agriculture, was a song that used to be played in the morning and at lunchtime when we used to go to school. That song was by Ben Blastus Obulawayo. And Mr. Speaker, that Swahili song said, so many vijana muongeze pia bidii, mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana. So Speaker, many young people went to school hoping that education was going to be the key to success. Along the way, because of corruption, ethnicity, and thievery, the government changed the padlock, and education could no longer unlock success in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the problem with the youth is that the culture we have created is that agriculture is associated with failure. Mr. Speaker, where I come from, the lake has got a lot of riches. Recently, I visited Victory Farms, a huge aquaculture project, Mr. Speaker, that is doing 30 tons of fish a day. If you multiply that by 365 days, I'll multiply it with the price of fish at 300 shillings per kilo. This company is doing 3.2 billion shillings every year from the lake without doing anything. They're just putting cages in the lake and the fish is growing and they're making billions of shillings. Mr. Speaker, we need to build a culture that does not make agriculture look like dirty work. If you go to Wilson Airport, the small aircrafts that you have there, if they're not owned by politicians, they're owned by farmers. The farmers of Narok, the farmers of Laikipia. In fact, in pilot schools, Mr. Speaker, farmers are sending their children and workers to those schools because they're the ones who then come back and do overhead spraying. We must expose such things to our young people so that they can see that agriculture is also glamorous. It is as glamorous or even more glamorous than some of these things we aspire to do in offices like being lawyers and doctors and engineers. And Mr. Speaker, to be honest, to be a successful lawyer in this country requires a lot of hard work. And if you want to short-circuit the system, you have to be corrupt to be on top of the others. Very few lawyers have the patience of Senator Amos Wako, who has been in the profession for as long as I've been born. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage Senator Khaniri that in this matter, please also look at our cluelessness when it comes to policy. When the Kibaki government came into power, the economic recovery strategy came up with a strategy for revitalization of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the Kibaki government collapsed almost 30 parastatals into one parastatal that was called the Agriculture and Food Authority. Over the years, this parliament has dismantled the Agriculture and Food Authority. Now we have a Fisheries Authority. We are now have a bill for a Livestock Authority. We have ceded. We are now reversing. We are backpedaling on the reforms that we had there. There could be lessons there. Mr. Speaker, even today, we are told issues like NCPB, issues like fertilizer subsidies, there is no clear policy position. And I think Senator Murkomen has been very vocal on some of those issues, the confusion that comes from the national government when it comes to policy touching on agriculture. So we need to look at how that policy is discouraging our young people and discouraging the growth of this agriculture sector. Mr. Speaker, as I finalize, there is also the failure of devolution. How many counties still have farmer training colleges? The one that we inherited in Homa Bay, we have converted it to a university. And the majority of students are studying procurement and supply chain management. Mr. Speaker, how are we going to build an army, a cadre of people who are going to do value addition and to do innovation in the agriculture sector? We must now re-examine and resist this conversion of FTCs to colleges offering secretarial and accountancy and all sorts of white-collar jobs, Mr. Speaker. But we must also ask our governors what happened to extension services. When I was growing up, Mr. Speaker, and you do know at some point in your life when you are stationed in Homa Bay, you do know that my father had one of the biggest herds of cattle, which when they were crossing the road, there would be traffic jam in the road between Mbita and Homa Bay. But growing up, regularly, and I'm not a dynasty, I'm a hustler, regularly, we would have extension workers come, and there would be mass cattle dips. You know, the entire village would come with their cattle, and they would be dipped so that the ticks and the sesefly could be eradicated. Mr. Speaker, regularly, we had extension workers who would come and vaccinate and inoculate the cattle. When you left office as a livestock PS, Mr. Speaker, and when county governments took over, we have never seen those people again. Farm mechanization. Almost every new governor buys a fleet of 50 tractors and then employs his former thugs to be the drivers and turnboys of those tractors. And then those tractors disappear. In fact, in the case of my county, when the governor bought the tractors and gave them to his former boys, those boys would go for 1 week just roaming all over and plowing and picking cash, and at the end of the day, bringing maybe 1,000 or 2,000 shillings to the county government. There has been a serious failure by our devolved governments, and I do hope that this Senate, in its next life, will prioritize some of the concerns that have been raised by Senator Khaniri. And even those of us, whether we like working from rooftops, like Senator Cherargei, or whether we like working from offices, like some of us from the Azimio side, let us give our young people the right prescriptions. Wheelbarrows are not solutions to that lack of interest in agriculture. Neither are handouts. Neither are, regular payments that we're giving out to our young people. Our young people want to be empowered. They want to go to the bank to get money that has come from their sweat, not money that has come from state agencies. So I want to challenge most of us here. We are some of the biggest campaigners. We are some of the biggest campaigners out there from rooftops and other areas. Let us tell our young people the truth, that their success is not going to come from pushing of wheelbarrows or wheel carts or expecting the government to give you some handout. It will come from their hard work, and that hard work must be backed by the right policies by the government. I support and I thank Senator Khaniri.
Senator Argura. Senator Cherargei, what are you shouting across there?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to support the statement by Senator Khaniri. Mr. Speaker, we know very well majority of Kenyans are youth below the age of 35, and the unemployment rate is very high. And there is no, of course, available jobs to absorb all these youth, most of them graduates. And of course, being a developing country, the most probable way of absorbing this labor is through production, livestock production and even agricultural production. In this case, coming from a livestock county, still that's even a worst way of maybe engagement of youth as it is now, because there has been no policy of improving livestock production, especially in the pastoral areas. What has been there has actually been even only for the commercial big ranch owners, but for the pastoralists, they have been left their own, and that is why drought has always been coming and clearing whatever they have as it is. Unfortunately, going on now, then the rains come, you start again the process. If there was investment and if there is improvement to make that livestock rearing or animal production attractive to the youth, those who have gone to school, so that they see it as a means of employment, because then that way they can get involved in it. They don't need to be the ones following the animals around. But if they know that there is development in that chain, in the sense that they produce they rear the animals, then there is an established body or association or maybe livestock marketing groups within the counties, so that there is ready market. But even them from there, then there is improvement, having holding grounds where you have feedlots to improve them, you have vaccinations, so that they're in the right condition for export. Then you either export them live or you have abattoirs to export the meat. Then it creates a business in terms of that animal which is being produced, and it's then they even produce the right breeds and sell back to the farmers, so to speak, the pastoralists. Then that will attract the youth. Even if they have gone to school, they will engage into the livestock production at a level where they will understand, because you can see the end. At the end of the channel, at the end of the chain, then I'll have somewhere to sell, then I'll buy the right breeds, just like the farmers do. They sell and they buy the seeds, and it will be continuous that way. That will absorb our youth. They will be engaged in production. But as it is now, if we don't have that kind of policy, especially in the pastoralist area, then we are going to have a problem, and that is why we have insecurity, because you have youth who are not employed and who have gone to school. They have dropped out of the traditional livestock production system. So unless it's made attractive to them, it will be difficult to absorb these youth, and we are having problems, and that's why insecurity in our areas is continuing, because there are idle youth who can easily be engaged in this kind of activities. Thank you.
Senator Kavindu via Zoom.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to contribute. And I first of all want to start by congratulating Senator Kaniri for this statement. Mr. Speaker, sir, it's a high time that agriculture is looked at as a very important and beneficial aspect in this country. And it's my prayer that this statement of Mr. Kaniri will see the light of the day, and that the government will be able to support farming, and especially for youth, because, and not only for youth, for everyone, because farming is quite expensive.
Senator,
now.
Yes, Senator Murkomen, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to request Senator Kavindu to understand that the Kenyan people are following this debate, and the standing orders are very clear. If you are going to participate on Zoom, you must be still. You must be in a place where you can be seen, and you sit still. If I'm not wrong, she's in a car. And Kenyan people wonder whether we take our business very seriously. if someone can be shopping in Kenyatta Market at the same time contributing and the car is moving. There's nothing wrong shopping in Kenyatta Market, but Senator Kavindu can take time to be still and contribute to this very important motion, Mr. Speaker. We are feeling dizzy. I wonder what other Kenyans are feeling out there.
Yeah, Senator Kavindu, I think you are in a car and you are mobile.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm just rushing to the office. I was late somewhere, and so because you have called me before I reach my office,
okay,
I decided to contribute. But
I've
Mr.
noticed
Speaker,
that
sir,
you are always
let me rush
rushing
to my
and not
office
arriving
give me
on
time
time.
to contribute.
That's the same reason you gave yesterday when you were coming, and I told you. So you come to the chambers, and by the time you come, I'll give you an opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Murkomen. Senator Murkomen, you are next.
Contribute after. Mr. Speaker, I echo the words of Senator Kajwang that Senator Kaniri has distinguished himself as the master of statement hour. If there is a person who has used well the statement hour, Mr. Speaker, is Senator Kaniri. Apart from his prowess as a man who is extremely knowledgeable on the standing orders, I'm told only after Shikuku, Mr. Speaker, he has also distinguished himself, Mr. Speaker, as a man who uses the statement hour very well to bring issues that are of great concern to this republic. And maybe, Mr. Speaker, he wants to finish strong, considering that I'm seeing he's changing careers. Mr. Speaker, away from Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, agriculture is very lucrative. When the Deputy President spoke yesterday to a group of people in Nyeri, he gave the example of avocado farming. And Mr. Speaker, he gave this example that in China, one avocado costs about 140 shillings. But there's a young man in China who did a very interesting video moving from his house to the supermarket in China and was able to demonstrate that one avocado costs 250 shillings, Mr. Speaker. And these avocados are sourced from South American countries like Peru, Chile, among others. In fact, there is a movie, Netflix, that, Mr. Speaker, I don't remember the title, forgotten, but it talks about this green gold called avocado, which basically people are fighting over in countries like Colombia. And people are controlling where these crops are produced. And Mr. Speaker, agriculture is very, very lucrative. But the way agriculture was presented so many years ago was that it was for those who are established, who have big farms. Mr. Speaker, that if you didn't have 10 acres, 20 acres, 100 acres, you are not considered a proper farmer. But now you can do passion fruits for 1 acre. And, Mr. Speaker, be able to earn consistently every week, be able to sell every week, Mr. Speaker, to those who are collecting and supplying. Mr. Speaker, your crops, your passion fruits. Mr. Speaker, you can name all other products, including, Mr. Speaker, tomatoes, and all these other agricultural products. Mr. Speaker, agriculture should not be what it is. In fact, people used to say, oh, I don't want to do farming, I want to go to university. Now, after you're done with university, you realize that you want to go back to farming, to now agriculture. And so what Senator Kaniria said, we should have specific targeted policy that makes sure that agriculture farming and farming, Mr. Speaker, in this country, including livestock, is attractive to youth in this country and to the generation below 40 years. And Mr. Speaker, tried to explain to them that doing agriculture does not mean you are backward or you are less educated. Mr. Speaker, you can complete your university education and go back to do farming. And you can actually use that education, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that you achieve a certain, Mr. Speaker, growth in your life. I attempted to do a small horticulture, Mr. Speaker, in my farm. And one of the things that I struggled with is to get an agriculture extension officer. And if you try to go around even all these counties, you will have very few agricultural extension officers, especially trained on different products. because most of them may know only how to deal with maize. But you want to have those who can deal with the delicate products like crops like avocado and other tree crops. And Mr. Speaker, this is another area that we need to think as county governments. Those of you who are going to become governors, please don't build big hospital buildings which have no medical equipment. Don't build so many shops, Mr. Speaker, and markets, but there are no products that come from the farm. I think we need to go back, even if it is to have 2 or 3 extension officers, qualified ones per constituency or sub-county, Mr. Speaker. It will be useful to our farmers. That is an area that we need to invest and make sure that, Mr. Speaker, when we talk, and I want to convince Senator George Kaniri, Mr. Speaker, that when we talk about those of us who are in the Hustler Nation, we talk about bottom-up. And I'm so serious, I'm not even doing politics. You can go and do your bottom-up even in a different political party. But one of the things that we have to do as a country to improve earning in this country is to get away from this injection of a lot of resources on capital-intensive projects. We've done enough, we've tried. We've done the super highways, we've done the railway, we've done the bypasses and all that. I think it's time now we inject our resources directly to where results will lead to pesa mfukoni, that people will have money directly in their pockets and they can be able then to contribute to the economy from the source. That means let's have good seeds, let's have cultural extension officers, let's have good marketing done either by county government or the national government using the agencies that have been established by law. If we do that, I think we'll be able to change the lives of our people, because even though we have a small percentage of Kenyans who have degrees and looking for jobs, Mr. Speaker, it's clear in this country that we are unable to absorb all these people in the job market. What are we going to do with these young people? We must be able to train them, and then when you are done with your business course, you are done with an agriculture course, even when with your low degree. I know one of my friends who is running now for MP, it's called what, in Thika here, in Muranga, Mr. James Muriu. Mr. Speaker, runs one of the biggest law firms in Africa and the world, but he's a very serious farmer. Why he chose, after running and establishing, and Senator Amos Wako knows him, Kongo Mogeni, they know him because he runs one of the biggest law firms in Africa. But he's a farmer in Naivasha. He does very well. It does export of horticulture to Europe. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is profitable. It can employ our youth. We must take what Senator George Kaniri has said seriously. We must go back in the next government, either county or national government, to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, we make agriculture the center of youth employment from bottom up. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We are running out of statement hour because we have another statement. But before I say that, I know this is a very interesting topic. When we were growing up, I think one thing that also discouraged agriculture, I remember in school, whenever you committed a crime, your punishment would be you were taken to go and farm. So you grew up knowing that farming is a punishment. Next statement is from Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Nimesimama chini ya kifungu cha 48(1) kuomba taarifa kutoka kwa kamati ya barabara na usafirishaji kuhusiana na kusimamishwa kwa kazi katika bandari Old Port katika Mombasa County. Mheshimiwa Spika, Old Port, yani bandari ya zamani ya Mombasa, ndio bandari ya kwanza kabisa kujengwa katika nchi ya Kenya na ilitumika kwa miaka mingi mpaka mwaka 2017 wakati
order, Senator.
Yes, sir.
The statement you are talking about is not what you submitted to us. You submitted in English, and what you are presenting is different.
But Mr. Speaker, it's a statement that I'm reading in Kiswahili. I've translated it in Kiswahili. It is in English, yes, but I've decided to read it in Kiswahili, which is a language of this house, and it's also the language of the AU.
But that's not what I approved as Speaker. You should have submitted it in Kiswahili that I approve.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir. Let me read it in English.
Okay.
I rise pursuant to standing order number 48.
Senators Mathayo, what's your point?
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, katika tafsiri ya ile statement anayoieleza hivi sasa Senator Fakii, nataka tu kueleza kwamba ikiwa unaifasiri kitofauti na vile ilivyoandikwa Kizungu, unaweza kupata mtu asimame aweze kusema yale makosa, lakini sioni sababu gani ya kwamba ikiwa yeye ana ule utaalamu wa kutafsiri hii statement ya Kizungu kwa Kiswahili, sioni kama kuna makosa yoyote, manake anayoyaongea ni yale ambayo ameyaandika katika lugha ya Kizungu. Asante.
Lakini hiyo si ngoja, unajua ile niliapprove sio ile anasoma. So nilikuwa nasema tu kwa sababu alileta kwa Kimombo, wacha asome kwa Kimombo kwa sababu ako nayo. That's what let's not dwell on it. Faki is very good in both languages, and what he's having is English actually. So proceed.
No, I've studied English since 1969, so it's not a problem. I rise, Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transportation on the state of operations at the oil port in Mombasa. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain why the oil port in Mombasa County has been rendered partially inoperational by the Kenya Revenue Authority and the Kenya Ports Authority. 2, state why the port has been closed to small vessels, some of which were undertaking transshipment business between Mombasa and the other small ports of Zanzibar and Pemba and Tanga. Number 3, state the measures being taken by the government to reopen the port, considering that its partial closure has negatively affected business in Mombasa, especially the Old Town area. Mr. Speaker, sir, this old port used to allow many vessels, small vessels, which could not go into the main port on the other side, to dock and discharge goods, some of which were very important to the livelihoods of the people. For instance, dry fish, like the dry fish, all of which was coming from parts of Kismayu and other parts of Somalia, used to be offloaded at this spot, and it used to be transported over the Kenya so that people can enjoy a fish meal at a very low price. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, as a result of this closure of this port, these vessels have not been coming, and it has really affected business in that part of Mombasa. So, Mr. Speaker, I beg that this statement be referred to the relevant committee so that they can also visit the place and see that it's almost dead. What is there currently is a consignment of rice, which was impounded in 2017, and it is still there. It's rotting, and it's very bad to allow food to rot, yet people are dying hungry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Stewart Mazayo.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, hii bandari ya zamani, Bwana Spika, naunga mkono, nataka kumshukuru seneta wa Mombasa County kwa kuleta statement hii, kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza, bandari hii ni ya zamani. Tunaweza kukumbuka ya kwamba bandari hii ilikuwa inafanya biashara ndogo ndogo, sio kama ile bandari kubwa ya upande ule wa KPA, lakini bandari hii hususan ilikuwa ya wafanyikazi biashara, wale wanaofanya biashara ndogo ndogo, sio zile biashara kubwa kubwa za meli na hatimaye pengine meli zile kubwa na za kiutalii. Bandari hii ilikuwa inasaidia, na ndio nia ya serikali kuona ya kwamba imeweza kusaidia wafanyikazi wale wadogo, wale wanafanyikazi biashara wadogo. Bandari hii, Bwana Spika, ni kwamba katika wale wafanyikazi wafanye biashara wadogo wadogo, Bwana Spika, imekuwa hii kifanya zile biashara nyingi wapo zilikuwa za kuleta nguo kwa bei nafuu kutoka pengine Kismayu ama kutoka pengine sehemu mbalimbali za kutoka za Middle East, au sivyo kuleta vyakula kama tende na vitu vingine. na pia vile vile vyakula vingine ambavyo vilikuwa hususan vilikuwa vinatumiwa katika bandari hii ya zamani, vilikuwa kama papa, samaki wale wa kukausha ambao tunawaita ng'onda, na vile vile vitu kama vipungu. Kwa hiyo biashara ile inaweza kumuona yule Mkenya anaweza nunua kile chakula ambacho kimeletwa katika bandari ndogo, na anaweza kununua akiwa na ule uwezo wa kuinunua, ilikuwa inaweza kuwasaidia sana. Na nafikiria hii statement wakati ikipelekwa, ingekuwa vizuri ile kamati husika iende ikajionee ni kwa nini ile bandari iliweza kufungwa na hatimaye wafanye biashara wale wadogo kukosa mapato yao. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Musurura, was this before you want to contribute to this?
I'll contribute.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I thank Senator Faki for coming up with this statement, and it is a statement that concerns small businesses, and as a country we have to see how to encourage small businesses to grow. The people who have started small businesses and have mushroomed and have ended up being also employers. So, Honorable Speaker, I hope that you'll direct, because this deals with trade. There's a close relationship between trade and accessibility of roads, and I'm sure when it comes to the committee, I know you'll make a ruling, but being also vice chair of trade committee, I know I would really be interested in going there to see what exactly is happening and bring a finding to this committee for the purpose of ensuring the accessibility of that road by small scale traders. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Sakaja.
I don't even know I'm working with this. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Senator Faki. And just to remind him, there's a lot happening down there. I think recently when my committee had a session on the issue of seafarers, a lot was unearthed, Mr. Speaker. In fact, some of those who came to participate, including MCAs from Mombasa County, they expressed concern as to how many years ago, you know, you'd find a lot of fish coming in from the trawlers and from these big fishing companies. And that is, you know, all types, you know, octopus, whatnot. The one Senator Majoy was saying that we can't pronounce jangu, panda, I don't know what he was. You know, Mr. Speaker, when you allow members to use Swahili, let them use Swahili that we understand as well, you know, and explain to us. But Mr. Speaker, we discovered something, and one of the seafarers, a group of them, told us that they would go to the deep sea and stay there for months, and when they want to fish, they're told, no, you relax, don't fish, relax. A fishing vessel, and Senator Milgo, you were there, a fishing vessel would stay in high seas for months. And at that time we were dealing with the issue of labor issues. Some had died and whatnot. And then one night, another vessel comes, offloads some cargo, and that is what they bring back to the port. Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of illicit trade that is going on, and a lot of other, you know, countries taking advantage of the laxity in our territorial waters. Mr. Speaker, we directed that the relevant authorities who deal with these maritime issues, including the Coast Guard, and even we suggest the DCI to assist, to investigate and to bring us a report, because we are not done with this matter. In fact, immediately we finished, we got a lot of calls from some of these people who I would assume are the cartels in that industry. Mr. Speaker, I just want to inform Senator Faki that we are waiting for that report from the Coast Guard and from the relevant investigative authorities, because it is directly affecting the incomes of the people, not just of Mombasa, but the people of Kenya, because that is a resource, even under Chapter 5 of our Constitution, that is a resource that belongs to the entire country and people of Kenya. There's a lot of fishy business, no pun intended, there's a lot of fishy business that is happening at the coast, and I think it needs to be brought to light. So we'll be very happy to bring that report, but just to let those know that we didn't just come and listen, We've brought our report, and part of those recommendations are for the Coast Guard to come back to us. Mr. Speaker, we must do everything to take care of the small business person. We must do everything, and that is why we're speaking the same language now with Senator Murkomen, that we want everyone to do work which is work, or kazi ni kazi, so that they get pesa mfukoni. There's nothing more important. There's no need for us to focus and center around big businessmen, huge Japanese trolling fishing lines, while our small fishermen, our small traders in those markets in Mombasa, in Kilifi, in Kwale, no longer have even the goods with which, the produce that they need to trade with, because somebody else is doing illicit business at a very high capacity. That is not the Kenya that we want. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Finally, Senator Agura.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank Senator Faki for coming up with this statement. I'm a member of the Transport Committee. I think we'll take it up. And I once, during my visit to the coast, visited the old port. And my thinking is that when we talk of blue economy, then there must be a place to land. And the small-scale fishermen and transporters will not need to use the main port. There must be many such small ports along the coastline so that they can easily dock and drop and pick whatever they are dealing in. Even when it comes to transport, those centers along the coast like Lamu, then all the way to Mombasa, there must be another route. You don't just have to use the road transport. You have to also use the sea, and you must have many stopping points, many small ports like that one. And I don't think it's fair to say that because there is illicit trade going on, then you close the harbor. It is close the port. It's the responsibility of the security agents plus the intelligence organizations here to make sure that they monitor whatever is coming in. But it's not a solution to close down a port, but we'll take it up and see what is actually the reason why it was closed. And I think it's very important to have this kind of small ports open all along the coast to improve access by small-scale fishermen and transporters, so that the so-called blue economy can thrive, because it cannot thrive without this kind of small ports along the coastline. Thank you.
Next order.
Order number 8, the County Resource Development Bill, Senate Bills number 45 of 2021. Second reading.
What's your point of order, Senator Gajuang?
Mr. Speaker, with a lot of respect to your authority to organize the order of business, I wanted to bring your attention to order number 16, which is an amendment that should be going to committee. And the reason why I raised this at this point is that I wanted to beg your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, to defer that order. I hope I got it properly. Order number 16, which is the amendments to the Intergovernmental Relations Act. Mr. Speaker, the reason why I raise that is that I want to request that your office scrutinizes the proposed amendments to see whether they are in line with Standing Order 147.5. 147.5, for avoidance of doubt, says that no amendment shall be permitted to be moved to a bill if the amendment deals with a different subject or topic, or unreasonably or unduly expands the subject of the bill. Mr. Speaker, I wish I would have executed this when Senator Omogeni was here, but Senator Omogeni has made an amendment to an amendment that I brought to the House. Mr. Speaker, when I looked at the amendment of Senator Omogeni to my amendment, I felt that it was offensive to Standing Order 147.5. But, Mr. Speaker, the fact that it is on the order paper means that you are seized of the matter. I just want to request that you have a second look at it to confirm whether we're in line with 147.5. And then secondly, and finally, Mr. Speaker, I will also take the opportunity to engage Senator Omogeni to explain to him the thinking of the devolution committee, why we thought that we needed to prioritize the issue of transfer of functions. Mr. Speaker, it might be not known to many of us that the deed of transfer between the Nairobi City County Government and the Nairobi Metropolitan Service has been extended. And it has been extended, it ought to have lapsed in March, and we get information it has been extended to run up to August. Senator Sakaja, who wants to run Nairobi City County Government, who is going to run Nairobi City, we need to know, or you need to know, whether you're going to run the city with all the flesh and bones, or whether you're going to run the city with bones that's like the fish we call mgongowazi. Because NMS has taken all the flesh, and Nairobi City Governor is remaining with bones. And Mr. Speaker, we thought that that amendment, which started when Senator Kinyua was chair, and which Senator Murkomen and the rest of us in the Devolution Committee, we thought it was urgent and important that if we mixed it with issues of the Council of Governors, or strengthening the Council of Governors, we are going to run into issues of money bill in the National Assembly, and we are going to introduce an additional point of failure. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge that you look at Standing Order 147.5, but I will also take the opportunity to explain to Senator Morgan why we think we can deal with this amendment in a different fashion, and therefore we stand down that order.
Okay, I hear you, and we will stand it down until you consult, and we'll resume when that is done. Can we proceed to the next order, Senator? No, let's proceed, Senator Sakaja. No. Did you mention? Okay, briefly, so that we.
Mr. Speaker, for the avoidance of doubt, because we are aware, and I'm glad Senator Kajwang has mentioned it, he's been a very good leader in the Committee of Devolution. Indeed, the transfer of functions from Nairobi County Government to the national government through NMS has been extended until August. But for the avoidance of doubt, it will not go a day after August the 9th. Mr. Speaker, I've seen people commenting, in fact, even in a certain forum where I'm with Senator Murkomen, someone was saying that it's being extended past and it can be done because of perpetual succession. It is impossible. The next governor of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, is the one who will have the authority to determine whether they should continue with NMS. Mr. Speaker, and the next governor who is likely, God willing, standing before you, will determine which functions, or rather which operational setups within NMS are still working that can be a department under the county government. So for now, they should start thinking of handing back. We want to make sure, and we'll bring a statement here, to make sure we have the full asset register, the full register of liabilities, to know what they've been working on, so they start handing over back Nairobi County to the people of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, who are waiting eagerly to make a decision on the 9th of August on who their next governor will be. So, Senator Kajwang, don't worry about that. We are on it completely, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
I can hear you, and I know where you are emphasizing on 9th of August. Senator Faki, you have 5 minutes.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Wakati tulipoahirisha kikao nilikuwa nazungumzia masuala ya regional economic blocks, yani jumuiya za kaunti za pwani, na tukasema kwamba kuna miradi, kwa mfano sehemu ya Kilifi na sehemu ya Tana River zinasifika pakubwa kwa kukuza maembe mazuri sana, apple mango, ngoe, boribo na mengi mengine ambayo yanakuzwa katika eneo lile. Mheshimiwa Spika, unaona kwamba Kilifi wanajenga mitambo yao ya ku process ya matunda. Tana River pia wanajenga mitambo yao. Kwa hivyo iwapo jumuiya kaunti hizi zitaweza kuwa katika mfumo mmoja, yani jumuiya moja, ina maana kwamba miradi kama hii inaweza kufanywa kwa pamoja ili watu waweze kupata faida ya miradi kama hiyo, na vile vile pia kupunguza gharama za maisha. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimeona kwamba mswada huu ni wa muhimu sana kwa nchi yetu, na inapaswa kwamba sote tuunge mkono ili kuhakikisha kwamba tunakuwa na sheria ya kuweza kuzisaidia kaunti zetu kuweza kuimarisha rasilimali zetu ili kuwe na mapato zaidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, naomba kuunga mkono. Asante.
Okay, I don't see any other interest. You know, the problem is some had logged in earlier, so I don't know whether it is for this or it was earlier. Senator Hargura.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank Senator Nyamunga for coming up with this bill, and I hope it will be processed through until it becomes an act of parliament before the end of this, the life of this parliament. Mr. Speaker, counties, this bill deals with the county resource development, and counties have, for the last 9 or so years, been depending mainly on the resources allocated by this House from the center, the equitable share. And looking at the reports by the Controller of Budget and the Auditor General, you will find that the counties are even generating less than what the local authorities used to generate, despite the fact that they have more capacity, they have more resources in terms of manpower. They can easily map out their resource, their resource areas, and even digitize it and make sure that it's everything is collected and reported. But some have been having manual means of collection, which ends up in people's pockets sometimes, or they use the revenue as source is not recorded. That is why, and one issue has been that the focus has been on the money from the center, the equitable share. But there is need to have a very structured way of making sure that the counties actually do clearly identify what resources they have. As the bill here states in section 4, they need to assess all the resources within the county, look at the means of exploitation in a sustainable manner of those resources, come up with the infrastructure requirements and the missing links so that they can easily generate their own resources. Counties, some have even capacity to generate whatever they are being given from the center now. It's only that they have not looked in that direction. So there is need to have a bill which turns their attention in that direction. Then if you look at section 5, it deals with the responsibility of the county executive committee member, so that it's clearly a function within the county, that the county executive committee member in charge of resource management will have to do an evaluation and monitoring of the resources available in that county, come up with a way of exploiting those resources, and at the end of the day, have those legislations or the necessary approvals through public participation and through the county assemblies, so that it's very clearly anchored, and it's a process which they need to do maybe each and every year, or they can do it as part of their CIDP, then they implement it from there. If you look at counties like Marsabit, these are, for a long time, has been considered to be low potential counties because the country has been thinking agriculture. But right now you find that is the next frontier of maybe development, because we have a lot of renewable energy sources like solar, we have wind, and the county, if it works with the necessary, we have the necessary legislation, then they work with investors, they can easily generate what they are now generating, what they are getting from the national government as their own source revenue by going to partnership, because they own the resources. And even when it comes to sharing, there was a bill here in this house, I don't know how far it has gone. On the other side, the National Resource revenue sharing bill by Senator Dr. Agnes Zani. I don't know how far it has gone, whether it has gone through the National Assembly, but it gave very clearly, in case of these resources, how do we share among the national government and the county government, or if it's across, if it's a shared resource across the counties, 1 or 2 counties, then how do we share? So it's very clear. If that is approved, then we can easily invest in these, we can easily develop these resources and generate our own revenues. Then even the common known one, the livestock sector, has not been developed at all. The counties consider that as a resource, not only in terms of going to the market and collecting sales from the livestock traders, but actually improve production, provide the market in terms of organizing, maybe having disease-free zones, holding ground so that the livestock keepers or the pastoralists can sell to an organized, maybe a county entity, which will improve the quality through feedlots and vaccinations, then either sell the livestock as live animals, export them out, or have abattoirs and sell meat. That way, along the process, they'll generate revenue from the livestock farmers and also from whatever products they'll be selling. So there's need to get the counties to focus on their development of their resources through this kind of a legislation. Mr. Speaker, the other one is about the regional economic blocks. Currently, I checked, we have 6 regional economic blocks in this country, but I've checked, I didn't find any concrete legislation other than maybe policies through the Ministry of Devolution to assist them in coming up with these regional blocks, because you find all the counties, I think 46 of them, maybe excluding Nairobi, are all part of one of these 6 regional blocks, which basically are supposed to assist them in to spur economic growth with respect to the region, with the within the respective region through policy harmonization and resource mobilization. Like in northern Kenya, we have Frontier Counties Development Council, which could easily look at what they can do best, and either through the national government grants or donor or development partners can have that particular sector enhanced, improved. Like you find transport has been a problem, maybe through that engagement by FCDC, now you'll have the road from Isiolo, Madogashe, all the way to Wajir and Mandera being tarmacked, because it's part of the enablers in that region. It affects several counties. All of them are within the same block. They can negotiate. They can go and lobby together. That way, that kind of a road can be done, and it's about to be done. But if it was each county on its own trying to look for resources, it will not have been easy. But now they are doing it as a block. They can easily approach international financiers to get grants or even loans through the national government, or impress on the national government, so that the national government, through that lobbying from that particular economic bloc, they can do that kind of infrastructure development, arguing that with that infrastructure in place, then the counties can now improve and develop the other resources.
Generated from the Senate, then it is going to be, it was not introduced in the National Assembly. So it has a challenge, it has a problem, Mr. Speaker. The committee also observed that there is an ongoing comprehensive review of Wildlife Conservation and Management Act number 47 of 2013 by the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. The ministry was collecting submission for inclusion in the new bill that will be overhauled the current act. The committee also noted that the ministry was willing to incorporate the proposed amendment provided in this bill, Mr. Speaker. The committee, having considered the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill 2020, Senate Bill number 30 of 2020, recommends that the House rejects the bill since it is a money bill pursuant to Article 114 of the Constitution, and as such it can only be introduced into the National Assembly pursuant to Article 109(5) of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the committee after thoroughly getting views through various stakeholders and through state machineries, we looked clearly and thoroughly, and we found out that the amendment bill of the Senate number 30 of 2020 is a money bill. And being a money bill, it is supposed to generate, any money bill is supposed to generate from the National Assembly. And for that reason, we are requesting the House to reject the bill that was generated and introduced by the Senate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, on behalf of the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, I am grateful to the Office of the Speaker and the Clerk of the National Assembly for the logistic and technical support accorded to it during its sitting to consider this bill, Mr. Speaker. The committee further wishes to thank all stakeholders who participated in consideration of this bill. Finally, I wish to express my appreciation to the honorable members of the committee who made useful contribution towards the consideration of this bill. I also want to thank all the members who had developed interest from this House and who came before the committee, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I beg to move, and I call upon
Your seconder is lost.
I call upon Honorable Sarah to second.
Honorable Kodede, are you aware of what you're seconding? Okay.
I'm only not seeing my card here.
The chair seems to have fished you out. Give Honorable Sarah the mic. Can you use the next one?
You can use that.
There is one that is on.
So you cannot support it.
So
you're not supporting. That's the issue.
Yes, actually.
Okay.
No, you're not supporting.
No, we are not supporting. We are rejecting.
So we don't need to second.
Okay.
Okay. We don't need to second. Okay.
Yeah. There's no need to second.
Okay.
So we don't have second now.
You're head of the committee of rejection.
Conservation,
Yes.
Honorable Sarah Korere, I think clearly from the chair's presentation, you cannot second what she's what she's against. So you can only decline because the chair is seconding means seconding actually means that you're supporting. So Honorable Sarah, you can only decline.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, as advised, I stand to decline because the Chair has already made a pronouncement on rejecting the bill.
Yeah, that is in order. Honorable members, being that the Wildlife Conservation and Management Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 30 of 2020, has in essence been rejected by the Committee of the National Assembly, it stands deferred up for mediation. Next order.
Order number 19, the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021, second reading.
Honorable Leader of Majority.
Yes. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021, be now
Honorable Leader
read.
of Majority, just a small clarification. Honorable members, Honorable Ochanda, I see you struggling together with other members. What the chair has done is to reject a bill that has come from the Senate. So in essence, it cannot be seconded because we are not admitting it in the first place. So it has to go for mediation. Yeah. Honorable Leader of Majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for that clarification. To the membership. Let me take that back again. The Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Universities Amendment Bill, the National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, members be aware, the principal object of this bill is to amend the Universities Act of 2012 in respect to a couple of things. And firstly, to address the issue of the process of appointment of members of the University Council, the Vice Chancellors and Deputy Vice Chancellors, as well as the principals and deputy principals of the constituent colleges of the public universities. The second object is to addresses the issue of the utilization and management of the university's fund, and thirdly, also to recognize the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service by reducing the number of members in the placement board and to provide for additional independent members. Honorable Speaker, it is common knowledge that today our public universities are facing management challenges. We know, for example, Moi University has had quite some challenges since the tail end of last year. And there's even fear that it could actually be facing a closure due to certain challenges associated with not just the management, but also the failure to remunerate staff in time, among other things. We've also had challenges which were well documented in Masai Mara University. And generally, not many universities are doing very well, both from a financial perspective, which also means that it could affect the quality control in those institutions. Now, while I've singled out those two universities, indeed, my own time within the Committee of Education, and we did several visits to most of those universities, it showed that there is a clear need for revamping not just the management, but also the whole operation of those universities.
As you may be aware, Honorable Speaker, universities tried to solve some of these issues by enlarging even the scope of courses they offered, some going all the way to giving some certificate courses that should be the subject matter of village polytechnics. Others giving diploma courses which should be in the TVETs, because all they needed is numbers to boost their revenues. And I think this also brought in their own challenges, because when you start with those huge numbers, you then end up having to employ so many people to take care of them. And when the system changed and the number of people who could go to those universities reduced, they were still saddled with the extra investment they had made to the establishment, which cannot be paid because there's lack of money. So it's in this sense that this bill seeks to alter the manner in which the leadership of those universities come to office. And it's basically proposing that the appointment of the chairpersons or councils of the universities should be done by the cabinet secretary. And also empowering the cabinet secretary in charge of education to revoke any appointment made in that regard. Honorable Speaker, universities are funded through the national exchequer. It's the money that is given by the taxpayers through the government that funds these universities. So it cannot be then right that universities will actually be clamoring for independence in terms of their governance structures, but they are funded by the public. And to enhance that accountability, then the Ministry of Education through the Cabinet Secretary need to be an integral part in terms of the appointment of the chairpersons of the councils who then manage those universities. Because he who pays the piper certainly is entitled to calling the tune, and to be the first one to even listen to that tune through the accountability. I'm advised this is exactly the rationale for this, and we do hope that the House will be supporting us on this. The bill also seeks to empower the Cabinet Secretary, again in charge of education, to have the power to determine who becomes the Vice Chancellor of the university, and including also prescribing the minimum academic professional requirements. And it's for the same similar reasons that if we just leave it out there, you end up with people campaigning and then they're in charge of those institutions, all those funds, but they don't feel compelled to be accountable to the ministry. And if you look at the budget, I think we spend close to 27% of the national budget on education. Quite a chunk of that goes to university education. Now, for that money, the accountability for that money, then it can't be that people just say, look, we just want all the other stakeholders, I just want to be appointed by the Senate, and leave out the main financier, who is the Kenyan people, represented by the Ministry of Education. The bill also seeks to introduces the Universities Fund Board, again, which will hope to ensure that there is proper management of the Universities Fund. And the bill empowers this board to have the powers necessary to ensure proper management of the fund, including the powers to formulate policies, to carry out the objects and functions of the fund, to provide direction on the effective coordination of the operations of the fund, and to receive any donations or endowments on behalf of the fund. I hold the view that some of the proposals are very progressive, and I have also reviewed the committee's report, and I've seen some proposed amendment, and I'm sure we will consider this at the point of the Committee of the Whole House. And again, it's a very straightforward bill, and I know the Committee on Education has really put a lot of effort in looking at it. I don't want to preempt what the chair would say, but I would urge that members go through the bill, contribute, support us in terms of the reforms that are required to get our universities to where they should be, so that we can be proud of them. I know, Honorable Speaker, and perhaps some of us that accused or guilty of having promoted the issue of or the clamor for every county to have a university. And this added up with a proliferation of universities across the entire country, as every county wanted to have one named after them. But we've seen the effect of that in terms of the quality of graduates coming out, even some of the courses. I mean, I have nothing against tourism and hotel management, but I know the graduates from Utalii College are better placed in the market than and have higher absorption capacity in the job market than similar people who have spent 4 years doing a degree in tourism and something hospitality management in a university. And you know, we're wasting the hopes of some of these our children. But when we give them that impression that they have a degree in hospitality management compared to a diploma in the same from Utalii, the diploma holder in Utalii gets a better job than this other chap who has to keep tamarking, because nobody will understand, you know, what is this degree in tourism management. But all this came because each of these universities had to create something to survive on. And it's something I know that we will need to figure out. Perhaps when we have the right management, they will start thinking of how do we even eventually consolidate most of these universities. So you have campuses all over, but you know, like a maximum of 5 universities in this country with campuses across the entire country, because the brand is very important. I've seen some of my constituents being admitted to some university and they're saying, now, how do I put on my CV that I went to this particular university? I want to see I went to University of Nairobi. And people even feel that if you go to some university and go for competing for the jobs at somebody with a branded name, you are already disadvantaged ab initio. So it's something that we probably need to do, and I'm sure the Committee on Education and the Minister of Education may give us some way forward on this at some point in the future, so that we can return our universities to where they should have been, and they get that respect as the towers of knowledge, which seem to have gone down kidogo in the last 10 years or so. So again, I think I've covered most of the items. I did mention also in terms of submission of the accounts to the Auditor General at clause 12, we are also proposing, some amendment there that the account should be sent to the Auditor General after the close of financial year, again to harmonize it with the PFM of 2012, and this bill, we know it's affecting universities, their higher education does not have to go to the Senate. So the earlier we can do it, the better we can get the approvals, and we give the universities a new lease of life. So I want to once again thank the Committee on Education for the time they have put, and as we hear their views, and then members will make a decision on how we fast track this bill. With those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and request the Honorable Florence Mutua, who is the Chair of Education Committee, to second.
Thank you, Madam
Honorable
Speaker.
Meli, you have to wait for the secondment to be done. And then you can, I can see you put in an intervention. Go on, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Universities Amendment Bill 2021, National Assembly Bill number 35, was read a first time on 1st September 2021 and committed to the Departmental Committee on Education and Research for consideration and report to the House pursuant to Standing Order 2165C. Consequently, Madam Speaker, in accordance to Article 118 of the Constitution and Standing Order 1273, the committee sought views from the public by way of written memoranda and further conducted public hearings on the bill. Organizations and institutions that made representations to the committee on the bill include the following, Madam Speaker. 1, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Education. 2, Vice Chancellor's Committee, Chairs of Councils, Kenya Association of Private Universities, National Association of Private Universities in Kenya, University of Nairobi Council, Technical University of Kenya, Universities Academic Staff Union, Agenda Kenya, and Power Africa. Other individuals who submitted their proposals to the committee include Professor Louis Mumera from Egerton University and Tom Njeru from University of Nairobi. Madam Speaker, the committee noted various comments in support or against provisions in the bill and recommends amendments to the bill as provided in the report. Madam Speaker, permit me to highlight a few important provisions in the bill. First and foremost, the bill seeks to allow the Cabinet Secretary to consider and be satisfied of the circumstances of a university before extending a letter of interim authority. Further, the bill seeks to ensure that the Cabinet Secretary declares an institution of higher learning to be a constituent college of a university only after recommendation by the Commission. Secondly, Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to harmonize the procedure for appointment of deputy vice chancellors and principals and deputy principals of university colleges and constituent colleges. This is by way of a selection panel to be constituted by the Cabinet Secretary as opposed to appointment by the university councils. The bill also seeks to limit the number of deputy vice chancellors to 3, to empower the Cabinet Secretary to review or vacate a council decision, to adjust the qualifications for appointment of chairpersons and members of university councils, and finally to provide for staggered appointments for purposes of continuity. Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to provide for the establishment of a universities funding board, which is very key. This will be transacting business as a body corporate and where assets and resources will vest in the fund and not in the board of trustees. Additionally, the bill also seeks to reduce the number of members of the Kenya Universities and College Central Placement Service to provide for additional independent members and for the CEO to be also a member of the board of COOPs. Finally, Madam Speaker, the committee proposed amendments to the bill for consideration in committee of the whole House, most notably, 1, Clause 11 of the bill, in which the committee proposes to amend the bill to ensure that the councils of public universities retain the function of appointing principals and deputy principals of constituent colleges through an internal mechanism. Clause 13 of the bill, in which the committee proposes to amend the bill to ensure that the Cabinet Secretary does not review council decisions, recognizing that the CS is ably represented in the council of a university. 3, a new clause 14A, which provides for election to the students' councils through election by the Students' Association, comprising of all students, that is a universal suffrage, as opposed to electoral colleges. Further, to ensure that in order for a student to qualify to stand for election, one must be in good academic standing. The fourth schedule, Madam Speaker, is to ensure it is only applicable to the appointment of vice chancellors and deputy vice chancellors of public universities, to ensure that the selection panel is constituted by the council of a university and not the Cabinet Secretary, who appoints, and to ensure that the chairperson of the selection panel is a scholar with the highest academic rank, and also to ensure that the council is not represented in the selection panel as it constitutes the same. And finally, a new schedule to provide for the procedure for appointment by the council of a university principal and deputy principal of a constituent college. Madam Speaker, it is therefore my considered view that the enactment of this bill with the proposed amendments will enhance the performance
and management of our universities in Kenya. As I invite members to read the report of the committee, Madam Speaker, I candidly want to ask members to support this bill to go to the third reading so that we can bring any other amendments that will be needed from the members at that level. Madam Speaker, I support. I second, sorry.
Your second, yeah. Order. Honorable members, I propose a question, which is that the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021, be now read a second time. Honorable Kibiwot Meli.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise on standing order number 35 that the issue of quorum is very important, noting that this is a very important bill, Honorable Speaker, for the House to discuss. So this is actually a very important bill, and I've sat here and I've realized that we do not have enough quorum. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
All right, I think from the face of it, I go on to order for the quorum bell to be rung for 10 minutes.
Well, currently is the quorum bell underway as the House lacks the requisite number. Remember, the National Assembly this afternoon have been, or rather has been considering a number of bills, and the House had just considered the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021. It is a bill by the leader of the majority party, and it is in the second reading stage. This is the point where members, or rather the House, debates on a bill where members give out their opinions on the different issues that have been put in the bill, but the House does not have the requisite number to enable that particular business to continue debating on this particular bill, the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021, thereby, according to standing orders, prompting the Speaker to order that the bell be rung to ensure that members get into the chambers for the business to continue. Members were about to start debating on the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021, that is tabled by the leader of a majority party. There is still a number of bills on the floor of the House that members will be considering if the quorum is achieved. But a look at what the Universities Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 35 of 2021 is all about is that the main object of this bill is to amend the Universities Act in the provisions relating to the appointment of the members of university councils and the governance of universities, and also to make new provisions with respect to the Universities Fund. It is a bill that has a total of 20 clauses. Clause 2 of the bill proposes to amend Section 10 of the Act to limit the number of deputy secretaries of the Commission of University Education to two in order to streamline the management of the Commission. Clause 3 of the bill proposes to amend Section 20 of the Act to empower the Commission to recommend suitable institutions for declaration as constituent colleges of universities. Clause 4 proposes to amend Section 24 of the Act to regulate the institutions offering specialized degrees. Clause 5 proposes amendment to Section 25 of the Act to provide for the declaration of institutions of the stature of national polytechnics to be technical universities. Members are expected to at least get into the chambers to enable the House debate on this bill, which has been read, or rather it is in its second stage, but the quorum has not been reached yet. So currently is that the quorum bell is being rung to enable members walk into the chambers. Clause 5 of the bill proposes to amend Section 25 of the Act to provide for the declaration of institutions of the stature of national polytechnics to technical universities. Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe, Chief Whip, has just stepped into the chambers, perhaps from whipping members to get into the chambers to enable the business of the House continue. Clause 6 of this particular bill proposes to replace Section 26 of the Act in order to ensure attention to viability in the establishment of universities at county level. Clause 7 of the bill proposes to amend Section 28 of the Act to allow the Commission to publish the names of accredited foreign universities on the Commission's website and 2 newspapers of national circulation to reduce costs. Clause 8 of the bill proposes to amend Section 35 of the Act to clarify the procedure for the publication of university statutes through the Cabinet Secretary and to harmonize the provisions on the appointment of certain members of the university administration. Clause 9 seeks to adjust the qualifications for appointment of chairpersons and members of university councils and to provide for staggered appointments for purposes of continuity. The House is hoping to achieve the requisite number to be able to debate this bill, which is in its second stage.
Honorable members, the time being 4:40 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Thursday, 17th February 2022 at 2:30 p.m.
EBs is not exactly what looks up.
Could you come visit me at the office? I think you'll be the first man to visit me at work. Aren't you curious to find out what my office looks like?
Yeah, just help me out now. I really need the money. Do me this favor, will ya?
I want you to like it too, you know. Otherwise, you'll never want to come home to me.
Your family must be cursed or something. This is your karma. But why should we also be punished? Now you're asking her to buy you an apartment now? You're shameless. Douchebag.
What did you say? Who you calling a douchebag? Mind your tongue, lady.
Ethan, stop it. Mrs. Holm, I'll arrange the best possible beauty solution for you. I really hope you like it.
to pay public debt currently. And yet you see counties are trying to rely on the national government to get guarantees with regards to them participating in economy. And when you look at even the public debt around counties, they have taken commercial loans in that regard. So this bill is very important even for Central Kenya region, where I'm the CEO of Mulima House. We would want to have a county development, association, Central Kenya Development Authority, which then would harness on issues to do, for example, like the water towers, because we rarely gain from them, and also tourism, those kind of things, and also any other form of natural resource that is there within the Central Kenya region. However, I think this kind of centralized dependency on equitable share has become very easy to go by. But yet, even when this is the first charge of any given budget, we are very constrained. And let me just tell you why. Recently, you saw that our economy has actually been valued at about 13 trillion. I beg to differ. There is no way our economy could have grown from 9.8 trillion to 13 trillion within a period of 1 year, just because our public debt has increased to over 11 trillion. So we are looking at an insolvent country. And therefore, it is very, very important to us start asking ourselves, how do we go back to productivity? And I think I had Senator Murkomen talking about this. There are three factors of production that are very critical in terms of productivity, competitiveness, and the markets. And some of these natural resources or products that we have can actually be ably consumed by the local market. For example, if you look at the amount of sugar that we import, in this country vis-a-vis what is produced, it's very amazing to see that to produce one ton of sugar in this country, you use about $800. You only do it in Brazil at $250. So how do we make sure that we actually improve our competitiveness? How do we make sure that we reduce the non-tariff barriers, for example, so that then we access markets? If you look at even the products that we have in our country, right now, look at even the border of Tanzania. Let's talk about East Africa. East Africa, you see so many lorries of, bringing maize and beans and potatoes, even from Tanzania. Yet Kenya has the capacity to do so, but then we are not doing it because we have actually long, given our people what we call development. And development in this regard would be the infrastructure. And yes, we can say, since time immemorial, and especially in this administration, a lot of infrastructure has been developed. That is the hardware. But whose goods are actually on our roads and railways? They are definitely not the goods of the common mwananchi, of the Wajiko on the ground. And so therefore, if you look at the Schedule 4 of the Constitution, we have not really seen counties going out of their way to establish so-called industries. I heard my friend Senator Arke talking about, or actually Senator Moses Kajwang talking about one factory, one district. It is possible, yes, to have even one factory, one county, but then very few have been able to do so. Yet, for example, if you look at Ukambani, you will find that it would be more profitable for the Ukambani counties to concentrate more on fruits, on mangoes, for example, and ensuring that the economy is actually more productive that way. If you look at avocado, for our information, avocado oil 1 liter is 6,000 shillings. So Kenyans do not need the 6,000 handout that has been promised by Azimio, La Kuzimia. What they need is a situation where you have them producing these avocados. They will sell only 1 liter for 6,000 shillings. And if you are producing 10 liters a day or even a month, you actually have your 36,000, which is more profitable because Kenyans want to actually, or even 60,000, Kenyans would actually want to produce for themselves. Kenyans are not used for handles. So those are the kind of places that we have missed, especially for us politicians, Mr. Speaker, because we have this tendency of promising roads and water and such kind of infrastructure. And to the extent that then the government has ended up borrowing all of the money from the banks, to the extent that then there is no money for private sector investment, which then would drive this kind of economic activities Because if Isaac Moore, for example, has got some idea, we'll go to a bank and borrow, so that then that idea becomes marketable to earn himself and his family an income and the people that he will employ. So I think it's a paradigm shift, and we, in the Hustler Nation, do actually promise that we will take a third of our development budget towards economic regeneration, because I think that is what we need to do, so that you put money where people are actually producing, rather than waiting for handouts in terms of bursaries, in terms of roads that are actually being built at a very inflated cost, to the extent that then they are crowding out any form of other investment, and of course reallocating, wealth to the most privileged people, those who can make government decisions in lofty offices that are actually air conditioned. So this is a kind of shift that we need to look at, and I believe then, therefore, because we seem to have really over-devolved. I just heard Senator Sakaja giving an example that even the money for equitable share can only go for recurrent expenditure. Yes, it is true. In fact, this country has moved from a development surplus to a recurrent deficit. Currently, we are borrowing 800 billion shillings to actually finance recurrent expenditure. That's why you find even the budget for the second quarter has yet to be availed to all of the ministry departments and agencies, including Parliament itself. It's become very difficult to get access to the exchequer. This can only change, therefore, then when we refocus our development. But then also we must agree as a House of Reason, as a Senate, that we over-devolved. 47 devolved units was way too much, and most of them are actually not economically viable. So if you look, for example, it's transnational infrastructure. If you look at the ecosystem that transcends the boundaries of a county, especially because these counties, they go along the tribal lines, that ab initially were demarcated to suit political ends and even colonial ends, if you go further down history. So you cannot therefore say, for example, a county like Lamu will not need Tana River for it to survive economically. You cannot say, for example, like Isiolo will not need to cooperate with Meru for it to survive economically. And so also all of the counties of Mount Kenya region require one another, because they have the same people with a similar culture and with a similar economic engagement. So these economic development models are critical. They actually mimic even what is happening at the continental level, where you have regional economic blocks, such as the East African Community, that now is a 7-member state with a huge market now in Congo, about 120 million people. You look at SADC, you look at ECOWAS, because that is the future. And you can see even the way Britain was affected when they left the EU, only that they got a respite from the former American President Donald Trump, so that they can actually be able to reduce their balance of payment deficits. So really, if you look at counties, they have to associate, and I really believe that Senator Nyamunga, this is a welcome bill. I'm only afraid that then, because of the timelines that are remaining, that it has to go back to the National Assembly and back, and we only have about 2 or 3 months of legislative time that people can concentrate before we have Senate somewhere in June. But this is a welcome bill. It should have come earlier, and I fully support it. What I would want to say is that even when you look at the regional economic blocks, we need to look at all the other forms of financing of such kind of development. And particularly if you are to have PPPs and also foreign investors, coming to take over, so that you have then shared ownership, but also concessionary, maybe for 20 or 25 years. That's the only way you are going to be able to rebuild our economy. But also, it is also an indictment on our national government to ensure that then we create new market for our products. I think we have ceded so much ground to the extent that then most of the products that are coming into the country need not to. Some of them actually need to be banned. For example, why should we be importing eggs? Why should we be importing milk into this country? These should be left to our local farmers, so that we are able to produce better and to have a sustainable livelihood. Otherwise, I really support this bill. It is timely. I only hope that it can see light of day before the end of the 12th Parliament. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mwaura. Senator Enoch Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will be very brief on my contribution to this bill. First of all, is to thank Senator Ross Nyamunga for coming up with this bill. And actually, as my colleague Senator Mwaura said, I wish that this bill had come to this House a bit earlier. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to make 3 observations. One, that one of the biggest problems that we have in our counties is, in terms of development, is this mentality with county governors. I don't know whether it's a product of incompetence or it's a default setting, that for them, if they don't receive money from the national government, then everything, including salaries, stops. You know, they have made themselves beggars for resources from the national government. I wish, Mr. Speaker, that through this bill, then the next crop of governors, most of whom I believe will be coming from this Senate, will open their eyes, Mr. Speaker, and appreciate that the real motivation behind devolution was not to create units whose only preoccupation is to receive funds from the national government to undertake development. Mr. Speaker, I am a very proud senator this evening. Proud because this bill speaks to what my party, Wiper, stands for. Mr. Speaker, we have it on record as a party that we are pushing forward the agenda of one factory in one county. That at least every county in this country must have a factory that does value addition to raw materials and resources found in that county. The Speaker, we are not just talking about one factory in one county for the sake of it. That comes with a lot of benefits. That creates jobs for our young people. That initiative, Mr. Speaker, will open up counties for inter-county trade. Will open up this country, Mr. Speaker, for international business, for export of processed and semi-processed products. But, Mr. Speaker, that can never happen in a situation where we have county governors whose only or the major source of funding is money from the treasury. That can never happen. County governments must be able to exploit resources found within themselves to be able to develop and create jobs for their people. The Speaker, I'm very sure, or I believe, that when Senator Rose was crafting this bill, she must have thought about a bill that she really supported, the Mang Beans bill that I pushed through the Senate, and I continually thank senators for passing that bill. The Speaker, this bill speaks to a principle that is very dear to my heart. A principle that every county is endowed differently, but so richly as to be able to sustain itself, especially for basic needs, without having to wait for funding from the national government. I heard my colleague, Senator Maura, Mr. Speaker, trying to create the wrong impression that certain economic models are specific to certain political formations. So, Speaker, when I looked at this bill is not about any political formation. This is a bill about our counties. It's a bill about resources found within our borders. It's a national bill for all intents and purposes. So, Speaker, in the best interest of a colleague of mine who also wants to move a bill, I would not say more, but I would say I fully support. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Abshir Haraka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too will be very brief to allow my colleague to move his bill. But before I do that, let me quickly congratulate Senator Nyamunga for this really timely and very, it is timely bill. It's never too late. The County Resource Development Bill 2021, and to congratulate her because these are the kinds of bills that will really bring change to our country, in the sense that a lot of our bills are not economy facing, and this bill is economy facing, and therefore the economic outcomes that this bill will ensure will actually go a long way in the other socio-economic sectors that would then give our people the dignity and the self-determination they need. Mr. Speaker, again, I think that the regional blocks and the provisions within this bill for regional blocks and for counties to come together to form blocks that would then give them the economic viability, because some of the counties, as you know, are quite small, and the fact that then they can come together and form a viable economic unit would be a very good thing. But that having been said, I'll just add one more thing, that for the first time, our counties have to act like governments. What a government does is to ensure it's economically viable, so then it can provide services. But what our counties tend to be as departments of the national government. The two levels of government should not be, one should not be subservient to the other. They should actually be equal, just organized differently, and therefore waiting for national government to disburse funds or for the counties to just be on their knees if they don't get funds from national government, then takes away from their legitimacy as a government, because a government should then be able to provide services to its people, whether or not another entity is enabling that. So I think as our counties go forward, one of the measures of the viability of these governments at the local level is to ensure that they're economically viable and that they're working on all the infrastructure and all the foundational economic indicators to ensure that they run as a government and not as a department of another government. So I think this bill is going to go a long way in ensuring that that county governments and devolution is actually entrenched, and they move from a small department as they are viewed to something really big. I know Nairobi has a huge GDP, but even then, without the subventions from the national government, we've seen services just come to a halt. So what is that GDP all about if when the national government doesn't send money, Nairobi also stalls? So we need to start holding our county governments accountable as government and looking at every parameter of our government and saying, if you don't do these things, then do not consider yourselves government and just consider yourself a department. But that having been said, I don't want to take too much time. I know Senator Murkomen is looking at me with bad eyes from where he's sitting, but that is one of the issues that I wanted to just flag out and congratulate Senator for her very good and economy-facing bill. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Abshir Harake. There being no any other request, I call upon the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving this opportunity again. First of all, I want to say that generally I am a very independent-minded person, and I don't believe in dependency. That is what motivated me to come up with this bill. This bill, immediately I joined this Senate, I started working on it. It took a long time because it drew a lot of interest from the governors. They wanted to introduce some clauses that made it to become a money bill, and for that reason it had to go to the National Assembly. It took a bit of time there, Then we had to recall it because it was not moving, it was not going through. That is why it has taken so long. But I want to thank all the senators, and I feel so much indebted to them. We have had a lot of contribution on this bill. I want to thank Senator Gertrude Musaruve, who seconded this motion. I may not have time to go through each and every contribution that each member made, but I have taken notes. They've really enriched this bill. I want to thank Senator Faria, Senator Okongo Omugeni, Senator Justice Stewart Matsayo, Senator Faki Mohammed, Senator Al-Gure of Masabit, Senator Sherargei, Gay, Senator Johnson Sakaja, Senator Moses Kajuang, Senator Naomi Shionga, Senator Mwaura, Senator Wambua, and finally Senator Abshiro Halaki. Mr. Speaker, this bill, and taking into consideration the work that has been done in this country in infrastructure, I want to congratulate the President, because what he has done in the infrastructure may not be seen today, but in a matter of 10, 20, 30, 40 years, every Kenyan will believe that we'll see that it was very important for us to expand our infrastructure, because after expanding that, it is very easy for the rest to fall in place. What is now very important for all of us is to get the best president who will move this country, first of all, get rid of corruption. Secondly, the president who will bring unity in this country, and finally jumpstart the economy. And that one will only be found in none other than President Raila Amolo Odinga. I believe in that, and I believe in his track record. I believe he's the right person who will move this country and also put the governors on their toes. Right now, the governors are not doing enough, other than whining and dining about the national cake. That is the only thing that they're concentrating on, that anytime this money delays, there's a lot of cry. Governors have brought so many traders or so many business people to their knees because of lack of thinking outside the box. Our counties are endowed with a lot of resources. If only...
Senator, are you insinuating that it is the work of the president to oversight governors?
He has to put them on his toes. If he keeps giving them money and gives them money all the time, how will they think outside the box? How will they develop the resources that they have? So the president has to do that. It has to be done. Governors must be put on their feet. Secondly, all the county employees must also be put on their feet. We don't want cries all the time from the national government, when the national government is also constrained by the resources that they can collect from businesses or the people. Other than that, I'm very grateful, and I want to thank all of us, but above all, I beg to move this bill, to move the bill. Thank you. Honorable Speaker, I beg that the question be deferred to another day for obvious reasons that we don't have numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nyamunga. We will put the question tomorrow. Honorable members, I want to rearrange the order paper to order number 20. Clerk.
Order number 20, the Elections Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 42 of 2021, second reading.
Senator Kipchumba Murkomen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move the motion that
the elections. Mr. Speaker, I would like to move that the Elections Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move that the Elections Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 42 of 2021 be read a second time. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that is straightforward, but sometimes not all things that are straight, just like not all common sense are common. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill that is so precise, surgical. It goes to the heart of the problem that I want to solve. Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan people are going to elections in August 9, 2022. And Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan people would like to, as many as possible, would like to run for offices, various offices. But Mr. Speaker, there is only one impediment, a very serious impediment affecting many candidates. The 2019 census indicate that, Mr. Speaker, only 3.5%, which is 1.2 million Kenyans, have a university degree. Yet, Mr. Speaker, the Elections Act 2011, the Elections Act number 24 of 2011, Mr. Speaker, provides that for one to be able to run for office, Mr. Speaker, that qualification of nomination for candidates in Section 22 includes, Mr. Speaker, that to be a member of Parliament, you must have a degree from a university recognized in Kenya. This is where I have a problem, Mr. Speaker. It also provides that for you to be a county assembly member, you must have a degree from a university recognized in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, this is the heart of my problem. This is where I have greater concern, Mr. Speaker, because whereas we have the aspirations to have Kenyans have university degree, I think, Mr. Speaker, with the benefit of hindsight and with the experience we've received from 2011, it is now clear that, Mr. Speaker, these provisions was not well thought out. And I will explain why. Number one, as I've said, is that the vast majority of Kenyans of the country, only 3.5% have a degree. 96.5% of Kenyans do not have a degree. In the 2019 census, it showed that, Mr. Speaker, in one of the districts in Narok County, the Mau East, Mr. Speaker, that no person, not a single person, was recorded to have a degree. In Mount Elgon sub-county, Mr. Speaker, it was also clear from the census that there is no one individual who has a degree. Mr. Speaker, that doesn't mean that people from Mount Elgon East do not have degrees. It shows, Mr. Speaker, that most of the degree holders from these areas have migrated to other areas, either to Kitale town for Mount Elgon East, Mount Elgon sub-county, Mr. Speaker, or Nairobi. In fact, Sakaja should be aware of this, Senator Sakaja, that 25% of the 1.2 million Kenyans, which is nearly 300,000 of the graduates, reside in Nairobi. And then the rest now moves to cities like Nakuru, Mr. Speaker, Kisumu, Mombasa, a little bit of other towns around Nairobi. If you talk about Machakos, talk about Kiambu, Mr. Speaker, you talk about places like Rongai and other areas. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about degree qualification and say that only 3.5% of Kenyans should qualify to run to be members of county assembly and members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, I think it's unfair to say 96.5% of Kenyans should only choose leaders from 3.5% of their population. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the reason why I think that this degree requirement is unfortunate and unfair is because
it is clear, Mr. Speaker, in Article 38 of the Constitution, that, Mr. Speaker, everyone has a right, without unnecessary restrictions, Mr. Speaker, to enjoy political rights. And, Mr. Speaker, if those political rights, I can just imagine that the Kenyan people wrote a constitution, the constitution to govern 100% of people of Kenya. But then from a statute, we tell them, but Article 38 is only enjoyed by 3.5% of the public. How unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, to say that, yes, Article 38 is good, but we have made some restriction. And, Mr. Speaker, I agree with the judge who, in the case of the County Assembly Forum against the IBC and others, Mr. Speaker, said that it was not feasible that County Assembly members should only come from 3.5% of Kenyan people, who most of them, 25%, have migrated to the place, to Nairobi and other cities, to look for money, Mr. Speaker, and a better life. Now you're telling them this special club of individuals can now fly to Isiolo to go and run to be county assembly members, can fly to Wajir, Mr. Speaker, can go to Elgeyo Marakwet County to now get for seats, and if they don't get, they come back to the city, you know. And those people who live in that vicinity, the teachers who, Mr. Speaker, have taught in Embobut and Bolot Ward for 10 years, you tell them you are not qualified to become a county assembly member in that area. Mr. Speaker, that is unreasonable restriction. That's a violation of Article 38 of the Constitution. And I'm glad, Mr. Speaker, that already the courts have assisted us on the part that touches on the county assembly member. The courts have already said a degree requirement for county assembly members is unreasonable. But that is the same section that captures also members of National Assembly. Just imagine that in the 290 constituencies, Mr. Speaker, we are saying the only people who are qualified to run for this office are those who have degrees. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt in my mind that, Mr. Speaker, a court process, a properly prosecuted matter in a court of law today would bring the same results that, Mr. Speaker, the judge arrived at when he spoke about the county assembly, especially if you put the statistics on the table, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that you cannot lock out 96.5% of Kenyans from running for office as members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, they had an unreasonable thing about this academic qualification, and I'll show you how ridiculous it is. It says, Mr. Speaker, you have a degree, you qualify to run for office. But if you have a diploma, Mr. Speaker, in law, you don't qualify to run to be a member of parliament. Just imagine that nurse, Mr. Speaker, who has a diploma in nursing from Kenya Medical Training College. Just imagine that clinical officer. Imagine that person who studied radiology, Mr. Speaker, from KMTC and practiced, Mr. Speaker. They are the people, if you go to hospital, they do the scans, they do the nursing, Mr. Speaker. They are the clinical officer treating our people all over the country, having gone to school for almost 4 years, equivalent to the person who has a degree. But because formally, it doesn't have a degree paper, written degree, Mr. Speaker, you tell us, though he's a clinical officer, though he's a nurse, although, Mr. Speaker, he's a radiologist, although he's qualified and has studied and worked to treat people, that, Mr. Speaker, they cannot qualify to hold office of a member of parliament. Only why? Because they don't have a paper written degree. Yet, these are people who are professionals of high caliber. Mr. Speaker, think about your teacher in your high school. Probably your teacher in high school went to, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Science College, Teachers College, in either, Mr. Speaker, Nyeri or in Nairobi. Those days there were only 2, or was it 3, Mr. Speaker? And you tell that teacher with a diploma, Mr. Speaker, my physics teacher had gone to Kenya Science. My chemistry teacher, Mr. Speaker, had gone to Kenya Science. What? He was one of the best physics teachers in the Republic. They're the ones who are setting the exams. Now tell me, Mr. Speaker, that physics teacher, qualified with a diploma, Mr. Speaker, is retired. He wants to be the member of parliament of his constituency somewhere in Western Kenya. He is told, Mr. Misiku, Mr. Speaker, is not qualified to run for member of parliament. Why? Because although he has produced so many graduates, he is well read, Mr. Speaker, he is a professional with knowledge in physics globally, that is not qualified, Mr. Speaker, to come to this chamber to become a member of parliament. But a person who has gone, Mr. Speaker, to some college, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to mention their names, qualified, got some degree, Mr. Speaker, called degree in leadership. You cannot verify properly even how they went through this education process. Maybe they even got E from first year to fourth year, but because they carry the paper of a degree, he's more qualified than that professional, Mr. Speaker, who has served the country in different capacities. Mr. Speaker, though we are encouraging our youth to go to TTI, technical training colleges, and we're telling them, you go to TTI, you become professionals. Mr. Speaker, you have engineering knowledge. They can dismantle an engine of a vehicle, Mr. Speaker, work on it, restore. Mr. Speaker, you can be able to drive that car safely. But you say it's not safe, Mr. Speaker, for that person to run for MP. Why? Because he doesn't have the paper. Think, Honorable Kajwang, of a CPAK holder, a certified public accountant Kenya. But because he doesn't have a formal degree, that person, if he sat in this house, will scrutinize the accounts of county government better than most of us who have other degrees that are unrelated to accounting. But because formally it's not written a degree, Mr. Speaker, it's not a degree, you say it's not qualified. The unfairness of picking a university degree as the only qualification to become a member of parliament, you can see how ridiculous it is. Because a CPK holder probably even studies longer, takes longer time to get that qualification than a person who has gone for a degree in leadership in some university. And I don't want to, Mr. Speaker, a university, I don't want to mention the names. Assume some university operating, Mr. Speaker, in River Road, third floor, and there's a bar below that university, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Murkomen, I think from that law is very clear, from a recognized university.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when universities started mushrooming in this country, I am speaking like a former lecturer at a university. Most of the universities were operating in some building above another. A bar is, down here is a bar and a restaurant, but up here is a university. And that's why I was avoiding to mention their names, because I don't want to defame these universities. And I'm glad with the reforms that have been done. So far, they have reduced this mushrooming and, Mr. Speaker, uncoordinated growth of universities to various small buildings across the country. And you had lecturers running from Eldoret to Masai Mara to there was a place called to Bondo, and then come back to Nairobi, teaching, running up to Karatina. I know, my colleagues used to drive to Karatina, then go back to Eldoret, Moi University, go back to Bondo, come back to Masai Mara. Mr. Speaker, it was a very difficult time. And I'm saying, look at all these professionals. Look at the military. You've gone to the army. You've served your country. You go through training in the military from one stage to the other. You get professional training. But because it's not formally called a university degree, it's not a formal university degree, somebody who has risen to the position of a major or even lieutenant general, Mr. Speaker, without formal degree qualifications, they suddenly say you cannot be an MP. Or a person who has risen through the police ranks to become Inspector General of Police. Maybe then, now they require a degree, maybe then. And then, Mr. Speaker, you say, this person is not qualified. Mr. Speaker, if for no other reasons, I like to convince my colleagues that the qualification that it must be a degree, Mr. Speaker, is ridiculous, it is unfair, it's creating a club of the few privileged, Mr. Speaker, who access leadership against the provisions of Article 38 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, what about those who are already in Parliament? What happens to such a provision? Mr. Speaker, you tell people, okay, fine, you must have a degree. But we know, Mr. Speaker, Tom Mboya didn't have a university degree. He had some diploma. Was it from University of London? I need someone to check on matters related to labor movement. It was? Yes, it was Oxford, actually. He went to Oxford, but didn't have a degree, was a diploma. But a well-recognized diploma. Tom Mboya is the man who wrote the sessional paper number 10 of 1965. We may not agree. We may never agree with the sessional paper number 10 of 1965 because of the inequalities that came with it. But we are trying to say that he was so qualified that he's the one who organized airlifts with President J.F. Kennedy, and this country to take hundreds of Kenyans to have the degrees they had, and they came back to develop this country, including the Obama senior, among others, Mr. Speaker, Professor George Saitoti, and many had the renowned professionals in this country that we know went through that program. A man who did that had barely a diploma, Mr. Speaker. He didn't have a degree, but Tom Boyer's, Mr. Speaker, footprints in the history of this country are forever recognized. What about Daniel Arap Moi, who never stepped into any university, didn't have a formal degree? But do you know that Daniel Torotich Arap Moi had been invited to go? He was one of the most brilliant students, Mr. Speaker, who had been invited to go and study in Alliance. But because someone hid his letter, he ended up going to one of the best high schools in this country, Kapsabet High School. And I'm sure Cherargei will be very proud of that, because they share the same history with former President Moi. And Mr. Speaker, from there I went through, to college, Mr. Speaker, to become a teacher, and became the President of the Republic of Kenya for 24 years. Suddenly, because we are being reactionary, we are saying people must have degrees to be able to be elected as leaders. I beg you leaders, brothers and sisters who are here, Mr. Speaker, who have the privilege to be here, let's not block our colleagues to having opportunity to continue to serve. Now you're going to tell me, Mr. Speaker, because I don't want to mention people's names, but I don't know many in this chamber who do not have a university degree. I don't know them. But I know a number of them in the National Assembly. And I know them to be very qualified leaders, served their constituents for more than 15 years. Now you're telling me suddenly they are not qualified. That because of this law, in these elections of 9th August 2022, they are not going to participate. Why? Because they suddenly become less of member of parliament? And if they qualify, Mr. Speaker, if they qualify, then why can't others like them qualify? If we say we are going to protect those who already have served as members of parliament, we must protect those who have the similar potential to become members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. And this is where, Mr. Speaker, I beg our colleagues to be able to support. And I want to remind us, Senator Linturi was in the old parliament, 10th, as in 10th or 11th? 10th. And in 10th parliament, in 11th parliament, in the 12th parliament, this one, there is no academic qualification for degree requirement. But look around here. Who is not qualified to be in this chamber, Mr. Speaker? Why did Kenyans end up electing 80-90% of us who have degrees to come here, notwithstanding the requirement that you don't have to have degree to become a member of parliament? Why? Why did they elect us, Senator Sakaja, Senator Moses Kajwang here, Senator Linturi, Senator Cherargei, my former student, Senator Abshiro here, Senator Nyamunga? Mr. Speaker, even a PhD holder like Dr. Msuruve, Mr. Speaker, or a professional pharmacist like yourself. Mr. Speaker, why did they choose us? Yet it was nowhere written that you must have a degree. Because Kenyan people will already factor this academic qualification in choosing the leaders. You don't need to lock others, because they will anyway elect 70, 80, 90% of us based on that academic qualification. You don't need to lock out the other 2, 3, 4, 5, 10% who would come without a degree but with a diploma. And by the time we are done in this chamber, perhaps we'll get their degrees, Mr. Speaker. By the time we are leaving here, they may be having a master's degree, Mr. Speaker, and so forth and so forth. I beg this chamber, Mr. Speaker, and the Senate to agree with me that, Mr. Speaker, not putting academic qualification in qualification to leadership does not mean that Kenyans are not going to elect leaders who have academic qualification. No. It just means that give everybody an equal chance. If you are expecting 96.5% of Kenyans to vote for us, you should also expect the 96.5% of Kenyans to enjoy those rights that, Mr. Speaker, they are according us, the privileges. You know, every day I think, and I really am grateful, that somebody somewhere who didn't go to school, who doesn't have food, who doesn't have shoes, is responsible for my greatness, for my being here, for my popularity, for my visibility. I am visible here because someone in Embobut Forest, Mr. Speaker, or somebody who lives somewhere in a place called Kalwal in Keyo South, or somebody who lives somewhere, Mr. Speaker, in Iten, or in the slums in Iten, Mr. Speaker, or in Kapcherop, is responsible for my being here, so that I wear a tie, I look good, I have a bodyguard, I have a good car, I live in a good place. Mr. Speaker, we should not Mr. Speaker, do what is called Madarao. By now coming here and say, okay, we are now the more privileged, the more educated, the more, Mr. Speaker, having opportunity. We use our privilege to lock out, Mr. Speaker, the 96.5% of Kenyans who do not have university degrees. And, Mr. Speaker, let's open the door for them to be able to have also a chance to be elected, Mr. Speaker, and to grow from that election going forward. Mr. Speaker, I want to add that there is also no empirical data and evidence that better leaders are the ones that have university degrees. And I like what the judge said, Mr. Speaker, in the decision of the County Assembly Forum versus County Assembly Forum and others versus IBC and others, that, Mr. Speaker, leadership in Kenya should be pursue more ethics and values than papers, Mr. Speaker. Papers that sometimes are procured unethically. How many leaders are in court now fighting court cases because of their questions around their academic qualifications? Because, Mr. Speaker, they found that this thing has become an impediment to leadership. Some people got some people to do exam for them, or, Mr. Speaker, got a degree. One person, Mr. Speaker, who graduated, Mr. Speaker, I know, graduated on a Sunday, Mr. Speaker, from a university that does not have a graduation on Sunday, because he didn't check when they were faking the date of graduation, Mr. Speaker, he didn't check properly. Mr. Speaker, you know a case, and Senator Sakaja knows this, I don't want to mention the name because it was in his party, where an aspirant, Mr. Speaker, said he had a degree from, if it was not Guatemala, it was Ecuador. South American, one of those South American countries. Then on the dog, Mr. Speaker, was asked, when you went to Ecuador, when you took the flight, where did you land, the final airport? He said, I can't remember, it was a long time ago. Who doesn't remember the first day you went to school, Mr. Speaker? Then the next question was, what was the language of instruction? He said it was English. But in that country, they only use Spanish, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, that university, they have never taught using English. So, Mr. Speaker, people are faking academic qualifications because it has become a mandatory requirement. I beg, Mr. Speaker, that you agree with me that we must, Mr. Speaker, let's not, the Bible says, the Lord's Prayer says, lead us not into temptation. Mr. Speaker, this law is leading Kenyans into temptation. The temptation of faking university degrees, Mr. Speaker, and qualifications, just to at least have a chance, not that they are sure they will be elected, so that they have a chance to compete, Mr. Speaker, for an elective position. We should not do that to our people, Mr. Speaker. We must allow them, Mr. Speaker, to be able to, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second last thing is to say, Mr. Speaker, that, the second last thing is to say there is lack, Mr. Speaker, of what we call non-convictional qualification.
Niliyafanya kwa sababu yangu mimi. Mbona unapenda kunilaumu lakini?
Na sasa umeharibu kinga